Okay, folks, good evening. Can you hear me?
Donna Moore can hear you.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Where's that coming from?
We heard you better the first time.
Okay, hold on. I don't know why I'm hearing myself again.
Is somebody coming in on the phone?
No. Hold on 1 second. Okay, we're going to try this again. Can you all hear me? Good evening.
Good evening.
I can hear you all right.
Okay, welcome to the Town of Winterville regular Monday, April 13th meeting. Mayor, you're going to get us started, so I'm going to turn it over to you.
With that being said, we'll call the meeting to order. Item number 2 on the agenda is the invocation, and I will do this tonight. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we are gathered here tonight under some unusual circumstances for a board meeting due to the world situation with this virus. We ask that you bless us, give us the insight to do the right thing for the town of Winterville. Now guide and direct us and give us further exercises that would be pleasing in your sight. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
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 Okay, the next item is Pledge of Allegiance. I know we do not have a flag.
We do have a
But-
flag. If you look
Yes, we do
on my
have a
screen,
flag.
there it is.
I just missed that. But with that being said, we will pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge
Pledge
allegiance
allegiance to the flag
of the
of the United States of America
and to the republic
Republic
for
for
which it stands, one
one
nation,
nation, under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty and justice for all.
Okay, good.
Now, thank you.
Thanks, Evan.
I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone. I know I have missed the last 2 meetings, and I apologize for that, but it was a health issue, and as it turned out, I'm still now above board, and I think I'm able to go carry on the duties of mayor. I know there was some discussion on Facebook that I was not able to do, but I was in the hospital and rehab, so I just couldn't. I would have a remark to make to the person that made these, but I will not do it at this time. With that being said, I will going to change it a little bit tonight, since we are under these circumstances. Our town manager is going to sort of step in and take over the starting with the approval of the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so the way we've got this structured tonight, you all have received instructions. We have a polling for each agenda item. And so that's going to allow me to pull up a screen that you all should see and be able to vote by your individual name for or against the item. And we'd like to start this with approval of the agenda. I don't believe staff has any changes to the agenda. What we did add in this presentation to the very end was an actual abstract and some information to the item under other agenda items, Mr. Moore's discussion of a temporary reduction in electric rates. So we have added some information that I will send to you, each of you under separate cover at a later time, but we have that for you this evening for our discussion. So what I'll do is I'll launch the poll. You'll see your name, you'll see 2 choices, and for the approval of the agenda, if each of the voting council members vote either for or against the agenda, I would appreciate it. So I'm getting ready to launch it. You all should be able to see it. Okay, I'm still waiting for 2 council members to vote. Anybody having a problem seeing it? Councilman Hines?
Oh, I see it. I punched on it. I'm sorry.
Scroll
did?
down to the bottom and press
Oh,
submit.
okay. Oh, then I didn't scroll to the bottom. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
No, that's fine. That's good. This is the first time, so. All right, I'm going to end the
Appreciate that,
polling.
Councilman Smith.
Yes, sir.
And we have a unanimous vote, 5-0 in favor of the approval of the agenda. So yay, everybody, we got through our first one. Great job. Okay, the next item on the agenda, we have a proclamation for Volunteer Appreciation Month. I'll ask our town clerk, Don Harvey, to please read the proclamation. And Don, since you're sitting at the end of the table with me, we're social distancing. We also have our town attorney, Keen Lassiter, and we're all 6 feet, more than 6 feet apart. I'm going to ask Don to read the proclamation, please.
Good evening, council and other persons listening in. Proclamation honoring volunteer appreciation. I think that it's right fitting that we have this proclamation at a time where everyone is hopefully out there volunteering and helping their neighbors as much as they can. Whereas the celebration of National Volunteer Week, April 19th through the 25th, 2020 is a time to honor volunteers for the irreplaceable impact of their time and energy all year round. And whereas National Volunteer Week is an opportunity to celebrate the impact of volunteer service and the power of volunteers to tackle society's greatest challenges, to build stronger communities and be a force that transforms the world. And whereas each year we shine a light on the people and causes that inspires us to serve, recognizing and thanking volunteers who lend their time, talent, and voice to make a difference in their communities. And whereas National Volunteer Week was established in 1974 and has grown exponentially each year with the thousands of volunteer projects and special events scheduled throughout the week. Today, as people strive to lead lives that reflect their values, the expression of civic life has evolved. Whereas all Americans are called to observe this week by volunteering in service projects across our country and pledging to make service a part of their daily lives. Whereas experience teaches us that government alone cannot solve all of our nation's social problems. So we have focused on partnerships with businesses, faith-based organizations, nonprofit organizations, and individuals to make a difference. And whereas the town of Winterville believes that a tangible and sustained effort must be made to meet the diverse needs and challenges our residents may be facing because of emergencies or economic crises. And whereas the town of Winterville is committed to encouraging volunteerism among its employees, partners, businesses, organizations, and citizens. And whereas volunteers are vital to our future as a caring and productive town, dozens of volunteers through nonprofit charities and faith-based organizations working in our community utilize their time and talents daily to make a difference in the lives of children, adults, and the elderly. And whereas the celebration of National Volunteer Week, April 19th through 25th, 2020, and now therefore, I, Douglas A. Jackson, Mayor of the town of Winterville, hereby honor the volunteers, and in witness whereof, I do set my hand and cause the seal of Winterville to be affixed this 13th day of April, 2020. Douglas A. Jackson, Mayor.
Mayor, I don't know if you'd like to say anything, but we certainly appreciate all of the volunteers we have here in Winterville, and certainly all of the volunteers that are helping throughout this nation and throughout this world during this difficult time.
I don't know what the town of Winterville would do without some of these volunteers. We owe them a big debt of gratitude.
Absolutely. Mayor, members of the council, we asked for this particular meeting that all requests for public comment come in writing before 5 o'clock today. Don and myself checked numerous times. We did not receive any public comment or requests for public comment. So with that said, is there a need to read the public comment policy? I don't think so.
No.
No.
Okay. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda has 4 items. We have the approval of the March 9th, 2020 regular meeting minutes. We have approval for rezoning request to set a public hearing for May the 11th. We also have a request for an annexation public hearing to be scheduled for May the 11th. And we also have a budget amendment. So are there any items to be removed from the agenda? Or the consent agenda, I should say.
No.
Okay, with that said, I'm getting ready to launch the poll so that you all can vote for the consent agenda. The poll is now launched. Okay, I believe we have all votes in, and it looks like the consent agenda has passed unanimously, 5-0. Thank you very much. Give me one moment to scroll down.
Siri, we don't need motions.
No, you've already voted on the whole consent agenda. Is that what you meant?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're not getting a motion or a second. I know you put the poll up to vote, but I didn't know if we still needed a motion and a second to move forward to voting.
I think Keen, he's shaking his head that he's comfortable that we're okay to move forward with the polling.
Okay,
Thank you for
Sounds good.
asking.
sure.
This is new for all of us, so keep us
Yes.
straight. Keep us straight. Let's see. Okay, give me one more moment. We're almost to the next item. Okay, we're now under old business. And the first item of old business is a cost participation for betterment cost of Eli's Ridge subdivision lift station and force main. And I would like to turn this over to Travis Wellborn, our Public Works Director, to have him present the item.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. You have to excuse me as I go back and forth between 4 different screens here. Got a lot of stuff written down, and this is a pretty big topic for us. A project we've talked about numerous times. In fact, you guys had already approved previously a betterment cost share agreement, which is basically the exact same agreement that we bring to you tonight. The only thing that's changed at that presentation, staff had recommended that we come back with a separate financing agreement that describe the terms and conditions of the financing and payment to the developer for the betterment costs. But immediately after the agreement was approved, the developer received bids on the project. And so their attorney just went ahead and added that to the original agreement. So instead of bringing you a separate financing agreement back, we're bringing the original cost share agreement updated with the financing terms and conditions in it. And it's got the actual bid costs and unit prices in the agreement, so we know what those are. They're established. One other thing that I'll mention, we'll go through this agreement first, but there is a second reimbursement agreement that will need to be is intertwined with this first agreement as well. But we'll go through this one first. Again, this is the Eli's Ridge subdivision that's going to be constructed by Bill Clark Homes out on Worthington Road. The developer brought to us a subdivision plan, and he needed to put a sewer lift station to be able to serve that subdivision. It will pump to our new regional lift station off of Old Tar Road. Staff looked at the location of the proposed Eli's Ridge lift station. out and speaking with the developer and his engineer that with some fairly minor improvements, the town could set it up so that it could serve as a regional lift station and serve basically the entirety of the remainder of the sewer service area on the east side of the town. So like I mentioned previously, the project was bid, the contractors bid on it. The engineer came back. The total betterment cost came back for the town at $83,426. Originally, it had been estimated at $185,000. So it's approximately $100,000 less than what you guys approved in the previous agreement. So that's obviously a good thing. There is an additional $9,500 in additional engineering fees that the town will be responsible for. Doing this will save the town money in the future, not having additional lift stations to own and operate and maintain. As you all are aware, we spend a lot of time and money maintaining lift stations. There's still maintenance that you have to do on gravity sewer mains, but it's much cheaper and more efficient than lift stations. What staff is proposing is that the funds be borrowed from the water fund balance, and that the sewer fund will reimburse the water fund over a 5-year period for approximately an annual payment of $18,600. We do not anticipate any fee increase for this payment. We feel like we can absorb it with our current revenue stream. That's for this project only, for the betterment costs. Staff does recommend that council approve this agreement contingent on final town attorney approval. There was a couple minor changes from the agreement, including the two I just mentioned, adding the actual bid unit prices and the financing terms and conditions. Basically the financing, once the lift station is completed and accepted by the town, we'll have 45 days to pay the developer that cost. There's some exhibits that were not included in the agreement because they were too large, but you guys have seen most of those. I did attach the bid tab. The preliminary plat was the same preliminary plat that was approved by council, and the construction plans and specifications were approved by my office and Brian Jones in planning, but they're much too large to include in the agenda packet. Don Harvey, town clerk, does have a full copy of both of those items if anybody needs to see them. I'm gonna turn it over to the town attorney and give him a few minutes to go over the changes to the original document. And once he gets done, if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask or butt in whenever you feel like it.
Yeah, thanks, Travis. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Travis did a real good job in going over the background information. As he mentioned, you did approve this agreement back in February, subject to my final review. And as Travis mentioned, there were some additional things that changed. So we have made a number of changes to the document from what you approved back in February. However, I think all the changes that were made were either necessary to be made or certainly were what we wanted from the town and was agreed to by Bill Clark Homes. I'm satisfied with the document. I think it accomplishes exactly what we want. This is, of course, I think as we mentioned back in February, something new and different for us. We've never done anything like this before. But I think the document, again, is exactly what we need. I'm satisfied with it. And I'm here to answer, of course, any questions that you have of me. I will point out, I guess, one other thing, that the document that was sent to you last Wednesday, that was the document that Travis had at the time. We made a couple very minor revisions to the document on Thursday. And so as of last Thursday, the document was in its final form. Be glad to answer any questions that you have of me at this time.
Just switch with me for a brief moment.
Absolutely.
Everybody good on this agreement?
And I want to make sure I sent out a couple of emails last week, just trying to get that information out there ahead of the meeting. So, hopefully we addressed any concerns or questions that anyone may have had. And I did get a couple questions from Councilwoman Robertson, and I copied everybody on that response. Hopefully everybody got that. One thing to point out, as I mentioned in the email, the acreage fees alone that this developer will pay for this one development exceed our betterment costs. upon total development of that subdivision.
Great points. Thank you. If council's ready, I will launch the poll on the cost participation agreement for betterment costs of Eli's Ridge subdivision lift station and force main. Everybody? Okay, I believe we have completed the votes and the votes are all in favor 5-0. So the agreement is approved. Thank you very much. And we will now segue into the next piece of this. Give me one moment. Which is the utility infrastructure reimbursement agreement for Eli's Ridge subdivision lift station and force main. With that said, I'll turn it back over to Travis and give my seat back to Keen.
Again, this is very closely related to the agreement that was just approved. The developer, he will be expending a large amount of money over there to develop the lift station, in addition to what the town betterment costs are. And one thing he was trying to do is protect his investment over there. And he felt it would be appropriate and fair that third party or future developments that tie onto that lift station while he's still active in building and constructing homes over there, share in that original cost. And we thought that was fair. And there are other municipalities and utilities in North Carolina that do this same thing on a daily basis. So what we came up with is a reimbursement agreement. And this won't cost the town anything. Basically what this allows is that any third-party developments in that area that tie on or send sewer flow or allocated flow to that lift station, they are charged a fee based on a ratio of the amount of flow that they're going to send to the station divided by the total capacity of the station. So they're just paying a proportionate share of that original cost. The town will collect that fee from the third-party developer and then pay that fee to Bill Clark Homes. It's a pass-through charge. The town's not responsible for paying any more or any less than what they collect. The agreement expires after 10 years. At that time, the developer should have completed his home building in that area, and he won't have any reason to further try to protect his investment over there. Same thing as the prior agreement. The attachments were too big to attach, but it's the same exhibits that were on the previous agreement. You've got the bid tab and the construction plans and specifications for the project, which Don has a copy of in his office. We're asking for the same thing, that this be approved contingent on the town attorney approval. This agreement was the second of the two to be created. So there were minor changes being made into the last minute. I'm gonna let Keen speak up into some of those, but I will say, like he said on the previous agreement, all of the changes that were done were in the town's favor, and they were changes that Terry, Keen, and myself had requested of the developer. So I think the negotiation went well for the town. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Keen.
Yeah, thanks, Travis. Just like with the first agreement, the one that was just approved, the cost share, the town took the lead in the drafting of this document. Also, of course, after that initial drafting, the document was sent to the legal counsel representing Bill Clark Homes, and then of course we worked with them to come up with the final document that we have with us here today. Yes, there were a few changes to the document made on Thursday and one made today. Once again, I would call non-substantive, but each of these were requests that we were making that Bill Clark Homes agreed to those final requests. I'm satisfied with the document. I think it encompasses exactly what we want and what Bill Clark wants. And I would recommend that we approve it. I'm here to answer any questions that you have of me. I also want to say, while I've got the floor, for one last, while we're on these two documents, I appreciate the hard work of Terry and Travis and Ben we couldn't have got this drafted without all of us working together. So I certainly appreciate their help. I'm sure Travis, I don't know how many questions and how many phone calls he took from me. I'm sure he got to the point where he was dreading the next phone call. But again, thanks to all of you for helping come up with the final document they have before us today. Again, I'll be glad to answer any questions you have of me.
This is Councilwoman Robertson. I would like to thank Travis for answering the questions that I submitted in such a detailed manner. And I really understand more about the projects. And thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for asking the questions.
This has probably been answered in previous meetings or even right now. Did the agreement between Eastern Pines and Bill Clark Homes, did they ever come to an agreement on that more situation?
They have not at this time that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor and members of the council, I appreciate Keen's comments, but I would like to specifically thank Travis and Ben. They really carried the lion's share of this project in terms of all the nuances, getting the agreements together and whatnot. So my role was in most of this simply reviewing. So I thank them both for their hard work on that. And if there are no questions, we'll move forward with the vote. Okay, I'm getting ready to launch. Okay. I'm ending the polling. And I believe we have a unanimous vote in favor of the agreement, approving the agreement 5-0. So thank you very much. And give me one moment to scroll to the next item. As you all may have determined, Travis has the biggest load in this meeting tonight. So our next item is our last old business item, and it's the Chapman Street Culvert Replacement Project. And Travis, you have the floor.
You did say I get to take the rest of the week off, right?
Oh, no. Yeah.
So this item is obviously related to the Chapman Street Culvert Replacement Project. As everybody's aware, we were awarded grant money to pay for that project. The contractor has been over there working since January. He's done a great job. They're moving right along. They've got probably 60% of the actual culvert installed. They've replaced the sewer main under the culvert 2 weeks ago. And last week and this week, they're working on replacing the section of water main under the culvert. Once that's done, they can tie the two pieces of culvert they've constructed together and finish that project out. The original deadline for the grant was June 1st of this year. And we realized due to many different factors, the contractor can likely hit that deadline. However, we need time to do project closeout, inspections, things of that nature. So we requested a 6-month time extension from the grant, from the funding agency, and they actually came back and granted us 12 months. We've just got to sign on the dotted line. So this is just the approval of executing that contract amendment. There's no cost to the town. It's just a time extension.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, I will launch the vote now.
Yes, Travis,
Yes, sir.
just got one question. It won't prolong the completion of the project for us to start having traffic going back down on that street, will it?
No, sir. All this does is give us more time to do the project, close out the paperwork and things like that, and receive the actual reimbursement. The contractor is already under contract with a contract completion date. That's not changing. The only thing that's changing is the town's contract with the funding agency of when we need to have all the final paperwork completed and turned in.
Okay, good. All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions?
I've got a question. When will that street be improved? Will it be in the next group of projects for 21, 22?
That's a good question. And actually, one of the town's consulting engineers, Art Consulting, is involved in this project, and he does the majority of our street improvements projects. He and I were discussing that last week because the contractor started digging up a portion of that existing road, and we were looking at the subgrade and what's there. What we've actually found is it looks like there is rock under that asphalt, but the asphalt is just really thin. If you remember, we had that in the project a couple of years ago, but we did not do the work due to the construction traffic because of Boyd Street and this culvert replacement project. So we will likely try to complete from the culvert to Boyd Street in the next year or two, if I would guess. It needs it bad. We've also still got to get over to Gaylord Street and take up the rest of that. And if council desires, we can certainly expedite the work on Chapman Street as soon as the culvert's completed, and I can estimate the cost and see if we can get that done in the next fiscal year's project.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? I will launch the vote. I believe we have all the votes in, and as I count it, it is all in favor, 5-0, approving this item. Thank you very much. To give me one moment. Okay, we're now moving into the new business portion of our meeting. And the next item is the 2020 street improvement project. And Travis, you're up again.
This is our annual street improvements project. We've done a lot of large projects. First few years I was working here, but our Powell bill fund balance is kind of depleted in the past couple of years due to those projects. So we've tried to keep it within the allowable funding and what we receive each year. Due to that, obviously the projects are much smaller. This year, what we're proposing is to mill and resurface Milton Drive and Roxy Court, and also replace the storm drainage pipe under Corey Street, and then do a small amount of work on Cedar Ridge Drive. There's probably 50 feet of curb and gutter that needs to be replaced, and maybe 50 feet or 100 feet of the street that's got a lot of uneven patches that we're going to mill and resurface as well. The lowest responsible bidder for this project was Tripp Brothers. They've done the past couple of street improvements project for us with great success. I think everybody's seen the work they did on Railroad Street, Dare Court, Stillwater, those areas. They've done a great job, and they've been a pleasure to work with. They gave us a great price. Their bid came in much cheaper than what the engineer had estimated. So staff recommends approval of the base bid and alternate one. And then if those items go well, once we get towards the end of construction, we may have some money left over in this fiscal year's budget that we could potentially do some additional work. I don't know that it would be enough to do work on Chapman Street due to how wide and long Chapman Street is, but we could certainly look at it. We bid out some additional work last year, Preston Trails Drive, and I looked at what the bids were last year on that. We could potentially squeeze that in, or we could look at doing work on Gaylord Street, or we may end up with change orders due to what we find on this project and may not have any additional funds. But we'll certainly bring that back to council once we get to the end of the project and see what we have left. But right now, we're just looking for approval of the base bid and alternate one so we can get this under contract and get the work started.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay, I will launch the vote. I believe all of the votes are in, and I believe we have 5 in favor of this item. Therefore, the item is approved. Thank you very much. Give me one moment to scroll down. Our second item under new business is the approval of the updated capital improvement plan. And with that said, I'll turn it back over to Travis.
This item is closely related to the next item as well. I created this capital improvement plan a few years ago, and it's helped us obtain $1 million in grant money and several million in 0% interest loan money. So we've got to keep updating it every year that we want to apply for funding. We get points for having an updated plan, and it also allows council and staff to see what's on the horizon, what kind of projects need to be completed, and be thinking for budgeting purposes what we need to do in the future. The reason we're updating it currently is that we're looking at applying for some grant or low interest loan money for a couple of water system improvement projects, notably a water main loop under Highway 11 at Reedy Branch Road, and then from South Ridge down Mill Street to the dirt road at Park Road and up Park Road to Church Street Extension. What this is going to do is decrease the water age on the south and west sides of town, notably South Ridge, Copper Creek, Summer Winds, and Magnolia Ridge subdivisions. Those areas have the oldest water age in town, and the longer the water sits in the pipes, obviously the water quality decreases. The water quality is good over there, but we have to spend a lot of time flushing over there, and you're putting that water on the ground, basically throwing it away when it costs money to purchase and or produce that water. So anytime we can forego having to do that, save staff time and money, as in addition to conserving water. A side benefit of these projects would be to increase fire flow in these areas as well. So we're asking to approve the updated capital improvement plan. It doesn't cost anything to approve this, and approving it doesn't mean we have to complete any of the projects. It's just an outline of what staff feels needs to be completed. And it doesn't have to be completed in the time frame we have, but it gives us an idea of how much money we need to spend in the next 10 years to complete these projects.
As you can see, it's a pretty detailed plan. You all have seen it before. We use this as a guiding tool for both our capital planning in addition to our budgetary planning. Staff's done a good job on this, and I appreciate their hard work. Anybody have any questions? Okay, with that said, I will launch the vote on this item. Okay, I believe all of the votes are in. And we have all votes in favor of approving our updated capital improvement plan. So the item is approved. Thank you very much. We will move into our next new business item, which is our SRF loan application, which includes an authorizing resolution for our 2020 water system improvements project. Travis?
This is the authorizing resolution that we would like council to adopt that gives us the authority to apply for the funding that we just discussed. Again, this is for some water system improvements. We've been doing a lot of sewer system improvements here lately, but we need to spend a little bit of time doing some water system improvements. Like I said, trying to decrease the water age in those subdivisions on the south and western portions of the town's limits. This is simply authorizing staff to apply for the grant funding. It doesn't mean that we have to accept it. If we were chosen for grant or low interest loan, we will come back to the town council for approval at that time. Applications are due April 30th, and we expect to be notified of potential funding in late summer of this year.
Okay. Travis, our authorizing resolution is fairly standard. We've done these before. I would assume it's in like form.
Yes, ma'am. It should be pretty much the exact same, other than instead of saying sewer, it probably says water.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
I had a question for Travis.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
You said April the 30th when the application is due.
Yes, sir.
Are they going to give any extension because of everything that's going on? They're still.
They are not. They have stated that they are not granting extensions. Okay. I think we'll have ours prepared.
Okay.
we have a consulting engineer assisting, and we've already been working on it. Let's be
Okay,
honest. There's no way we could wait until the authorizing resolution to start, because it takes, it takes a long
Right.
time to submit something like this. It's a many page document. A lot
that's
of
what I'm
work
wondering,
goes-
because we halfway through April almost,
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
We'll meet the deadline with council approval and authorization. We'll get a submittal done.
So moved.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay, I will launch the vote. Okay, I believe all of the votes are in. And we have all votes in favor of approving the authorizing resolution for this application. So the item is approved. Thank you. And we're actually going to ask Travis to turn an item over to Brian Jones briefly. We have an appointment that needs to be made to our Board of Adjustment. The way we see this playing out, folks, is that we have 3 applicants. We have a poll prepared for you to vote on whichever applicants are nominated. So we'll take nominations first, and then we'll vote on one or more applicants as necessary. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Brian.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So we've got Ms. Helen Rollins, regular city limits member of our Board of Adjustment, has resigned due to some health issues. So currently we have 3 eligible applications on file. Those applicants are the following: Garrett Killian, Mr. Joseph Pierce, and Miss Brandy Daniels. I've spoken with each of the applicants, and all are willing to serve on the Board of Adjustment if appointed by council. So right now, staff would request that council would nominate and appoint the preferred person from the eligible applicants. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys have.
I nominate Joseph Pierce.
Okay, are there any more nominations?
I second that nomination.
Okay. If there are no other nominations, we can move forward with that vote. Last call for nominations.
I move we accept the name by acclamation.
Councilman Hines Keene would like us to launch the poll, if you don't mind.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you. So I will get ready to launch the vote for Mr. Pierce. Okay. Right. Councilman Hines Keene just likes that record,
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I believe all votes are in. And it looks like all votes are in favor of approving Mr. Pierce for Ms. Rollins's replacement. And so Brian, you'll notify Mr. Pierce?
Yes, ma'am. Sure will. We'll notify him immediately.
We look forward to working with him.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Okay, I believe our last item under new business is we are back to Travis. He's going to discuss our ADA, or Americans with Disabilities Act, self-assessment and transition plan. Travis?
Yes, ma'am. The Americans with Disabilities Act was passed in 1990, and it's a civil rights statute that prohibits discrimination against people who have disabilities. Title II of the act specifically addresses the subject of making public services and public transportation accessible to those with disabilities. In order to meet the act, the town is required to assess and implement assess the town's infrastructure and buildings for issues that make them not accessible to folks with disabilities, and then implement a plan to remedy those issues and to fix them. There's 4 steps to the plan that we have to complete, and this is something that is required by law, and the Department of Transportation is kind of taking the lead in, I guess you would say, enforcing this law and they've been in touch since summer of 2018, asking, hey, has the town started working on their plan? And I've been telling them that, hey, you sprung it on us right after a budget year. We didn't have the money allocated because it's going to be a pretty high expenditure. We didn't have the money allocated in this budget, so we put it off to this fiscal year. It is approved in the budget for this fiscal year. So they're okay with us completing it this fiscal year. So the 4 items that the plan is intended to achieve, number 1 is to identify the physical obstacles that limit the accessibility of facilities to individuals with disabilities. Then it has to describe the methods to be used to make the facilities accessible. Third, it provides a schedule for making the access modifications. In other words, prioritize it and see how long it's going to take to complete them. And that's going to be a multi-year process. And lastly, identify the public officials responsible for implementation of the transition plan. And that's going to be the town council through the town manager and public works director. We're going to be responsible for implementing that plan. Again, the main things are to figure out issues that we have. That could be anything from a bathroom stall not having grab rails, or the countertops being too tall at the front counter where folks pay their bills, or a sidewalk too steep, not a lack of a handicap ramp, or things such as a ramp into like the library being too steep and not meeting accessibility standards. Total not to exceed cost from the consultant is $50,000. $40,000 of that will come from public works, with the remaining $10,000 coming from public buildings. The consultant anticipated that 80% or $40,000 is what it would take to do the sidewalks and parking lots, and the other 20% or $10,000 is what it would take to have an architect come down and evaluate all of the buildings, the interior of the bathrooms, the accessibility to the buildings, and things of that nature. Again, this money was included in the approved budget for this current fiscal year, and it's something that we are required to do. So we're asking for approval of the contract, Task Order 29, with the Wooten Company, who has our on-call consulting contract.
Travis, I just want to verify, you did say that fee of 50,000 is a not to exceed fee, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So
It's
Travis,
hourly not to exceed.
So Travis, none of these facilities has not been identified yet, because this is what the company, Wooten Company, is going to do, right? The contract is going to do. He's going to go around. If this is going to include probably like churches and also manufacturers.
No, this is only the
streets?
town-owned infrastructure. This will include town hall, the library, public safety, the operations center, all the town sidewalks. It does not include any private buildings. It will include the parks, though.
Now, also to Travis, once this is done, how long is this in place? Is it a period of time to go back and redo this study again, or how's it?
Well, once we bring all of our buildings and infrastructure into compliance, we should not have to do another study, especially if we make sure that any new facilities are constructed in compliance with the facility, with the regulations. Now, the regulations could change, but I personally don't see them changing that much anytime soon. So basically, this is going back and retrofitting our existing infrastructure, such as sidewalks and curb ramps, as well as buildings, access, like I said, bathrooms, the interior of the buildings, bringing them up to the current code, and then we should be good.
Okay.
But that's going to be a multi-year process. It's going to cost a decent amount of money, and we're not going to be able to afford to just jump out there and do it all in year one. We'll have to prioritize those items and go from there.
All right, now prioritizing these items, and is it a time frame that we have to have these done?
I did not see anywhere in there where we had to have everything completed by a certain time frame. It just states that we have to have a plan to rectify these issues and work on enacting that plan. I think if we go at it and say we're going to knock down 10% of it every year, or 5%, 25%, whatever we can afford, I think we'll be in good shape, at least as far as the DOT is concerned, with them enforcing that regulation.
Okay, I just wanted to ask them questions.
So Travis, are you saying that regardless of the age of the infrastructure or building, it has to be brought up to current regulations?
Yes, I'll look it up, but I believe that it specifically stated that even the act was adopted in 1990. It said even buildings constructed prior to 1990 needed to meet the regulations. And that's just a good practice as well. I mean, I feel like the town should strive to do that, but I don't know that we have anything that was constructed prior to 1990 anyway.
Well, all I'll say is without having done the assessment and know the gravity of what we're referring to, that could be a rather expensive endeavor depending on, we did some of that when we did our improvements to Railroad Street. We had to bring some of those things up to ADA compliance, and that was rather hefty price tag.
Yes, ma'am. When you start tearing out concrete, you know, that's never cheap. So
if council will recall, some of the handicap, we'll call it ramps on the sidewalks, I don't know what you call it, the grade of the sidewalks and the road itself on Railroad in the 1 block area, we all had to do work to those. Travis?
yes, ma'am. If you'll recall, when we reconfigured the parking, you know, we had to provide accessible handicap parking spaces. And with that, you have to have accessibility. And rather than having a handicap accessible aisle all the way to the end of the block, it was cheaper and more efficient and better for folks with disabilities to build a handicap ramp right at the accessible parking spaces and provide access to all those buildings in that block.
Okay, does anybody have any questions about that? I mean, obviously it's a requirement, but nonetheless, I just wanted, even though we don't have any idea of a cost amount, I just wanted council to know that trying to bring all of these things up into compliance could be costly over time.
And it's not something that we'll budget for next fiscal year. The plan won't be done for 6 months. So we'll be looking at potentially starting to budget for some of those improvements year after next.
Okay, any more questions? All right, I'll launch the vote for this item. I believe we have all of the votes in, and it looks like we have unanimous approval for this item. So Travis, the item is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I believe we're done with our new business items. We did have an item that Councilman Moore added under other agenda items, and that was to discuss a temporary electric rate reduction due to the economic impacts of the coronavirus, otherwise known as COVID-19. Councilman Moore, may I turn that over to you to get started?
Virus we have.
I'm sorry, Councilman Moore, I think we got you. Could you repeat that?
I was gonna ask Anthony, what is the process of people who have not paid their light bills and how many have not paid? I was going to ask Anthony that question. Bowers?
Good evening, Councilman Moore and members of the council. As of my last check last week, we were still around 200 customers had not paid. The process has been, I would say, approximately double what we normally are for that same time period. So we run around typically run around 7%. And when at last check, it was around 14% for us.
And what is the timeline they have to pay their light bills?
Well, currently, with the executive order that 124 that the governor has passed, the, we don't have any penalties or any late fees as of right now. Now, the standard process is for them to pay about the 26th if they're on our major billing cycle. We have 2 billing cycles, and the other one is due on the 15th. But normally you have till the 26th to pay, and then we'll terminate the services the following day. So in our current environment, we are in a situation where we are not disconnecting services. And that was proactive action taken by the town when the town adopted emergency proclamation. And so prior to the governor's order, the town had already enacted not turning off, not forcing disconnects for non-payment during this event. With that being said, we don't know how long this event's going to last. So currently, and Robert has done a little bit of legwork looking with some of our neighbors to see, what kind of effects they've had. As they seem to be different than us. But I would say too, at this point, that where we are was probably a little bit premature. While we do have numbers to work with, we've only had one cutoff cycle as of this point that we can really kind of gauge or base any of our information on.
When the governor made that statement, proclamation, there was any money to help us pay those bills that we have to pay?
No, that would definitely be revenue that the town will lose. There is a payment plan. The executive order offers a payment plan that the town will have to cover, and there is kind of a mixed bag with regard to that. Excuse me, because the proclamation, once it ends, there's no teeth behind it legally. So there's some speculation as to whether or not that's enforceable by law. However, we would obviously have to work with customers and make payment arrangements with them to help them out in order to assist. So, payment arrangements will be an option in the future unless the council so desires not to. But under the current order, we have to offer them. And so that recommendation would probably come toward the end of the order, because there's no need of making payment arrangements today when we know how long this thing is going to drag out, because I don't want to have to turn around and make a payment arrangement next month and then the next month.
Anthony, how many approximate people have Greenville utilities for electric in our city limits? Do you have any idea how many do not have utilities that went up electric?
I would think about 1,000.
Was it Canterbury is the largest? It's 200 homes there. What are the subdivisions that don't have our utility?
Manchester.
Manchester don't have it.
Villa Grande doesn't have it. Everything on Redfold Road.
Which road?
Everything on Redfold Road, Denali, Villa Grande, Manchester.
Cedar Ridge.
Cedar Ridge.
Wow.
I think that's, what is it? Just off of Vernon White, on the north side of Vernon White.
The north side of Vernon White's all green.
Yeah.
North side.
Trails.
So as you can tell, there's a substantial number of Winterville citizens who do not receive electric service from the town of Winterville.
Well, just for thought, our fund balance is increased due to our utility rates, and therefore the present customers are paying more for utilities than the Greenville customers are paying. I think they pay approximately 11 cents. We're charging 12 cents. What would be the cost if we cut just temporarily for 1 month? What it costs the town of Winterville for 1 month, say 10% for 1 month?
So if I may, staff has put together Councilman Moore, we saw that at least you had seen what Washington, the town of Washington was going to discuss, and that was a 1-month temporary reduction. I believe it was of 30%. Staff took the liberty of putting a couple of scenarios together, and the information you see on the screen is for discussion purposes. With that said, I will let Robert go over some of the information we've already discussed, some of these bullet points as to why we're discussing it. We understand, we know that citizens are struggling with the unexpected impacts of the COVID-19 crisis. As a result, we hear that you all want to at least discuss trying to do something to help folks. With that said, Robert, could you?
Sure, I'll jump right into the fire. Again, as we've talked about earlier, council expressed a desire to lessen the financial impacts a lot of our citizens are feeling now due to the COVID-19 crisis. We looked at 2 different scenarios. One was a 1-month, 30% rate reduction for residential customers on the town system. The other was a 10% rate decrease that could be stretched out over a 2 or 3 month period. If it were to be stretched out over a 3-month period or 2-month period, it would be April and May, which would result in a 10% rate decrease seen in the May and June billings. Possibly give the board the ability to extend it for an additional month through the end of the fiscal year, which would entail the July bill covering the June period. We did contact several of our neighboring systems and also some that are in the NTE group with us as well. We are fortunate. We've seen roughly a doubling. Anthony looked those numbers up for us. We've seen roughly a doubling of delinquent accounts. Very fortunate compared to some of our customers. Some of our customers have seen anywhere from a 3 to a 5 times increase over what they have been seeing in their previous delinquent accounts prior to the COVID-19 issue. We have intentionally not raised our rates in the past due to the board's desire to establish a long-term rate stabilization. Obviously, this is going to cut into what we have been amassing. Our unrestricted cash balance, as I understand it, has increased just a little less than 3%, of about 2.8% over the last 2.5 years, I believe. That's some of the information we looked at going into this. Anthony put together some numbers that you can see down at the bottom of this sheet, the points of consideration. And obviously, there's several options that are available to the board. Staff, is more than willing to listen to field any questions you may have to help guide this process. But ultimately, the decision is going to be up to the board what they would like to see implemented.
One question I have is whenever this virus situation is complete and we find an answer and we're going back to normalcy, the ones that has not paid their utility, even within the next 2 or 3 months, they have not paid it. Would it be an interest placed on their account because it has not been paid? And I know that we can't cut them off because of the order that we receive. And I think that's the right thing to do, not to cut them off, because the economy is in a bad, we all heard it, but I just want to make sure that we not occurring a penalty of interest just because we did not cut the utility off. We have extended to the period of the end of this virus. I think that's my question right there. Would that be a interest placed on that account?
And
the only thing we are saying that we're not going to cut the utility off.
Yeah, the only thing I can say, we've never charged interest before. That's not to say we couldn't do it in the future. That's just to say that we haven't historically done that.
Councilman Moy, we have not only decided we would not cut people off, but we have currently waived the late fees associated with this crisis. So again,
I would add, Terry, that a 10% rate reduction roughly, and it's roughly, depending on the month, but you'd be looking at about a $45,000 loss of revenue for a single month.
And you include that, so just to make sure, that would be the 10% rate reduction, but that you put in there on top of that, the amount of money we're not gonna collect. So we know right out of the gate, there's gonna be a certain amount of money because of these executive orders that it's gonna be very difficult to collect for some extended period of time. And if we're lucky, we'll get it back in 6 months. I mean, there's a very good risk. And let me preface this by saying these are what I consider to be conservative numbers. Depending on how this thing goes, it could easily escalate higher than what we've discussed here tonight. But if you just put on top of that 45,000, the additional loss from that 14% for the month of April, we're looking at $177,000.
Now, Robert, let me ask you this. I'm sorry, Anthony. I didn't mean to cut you
I
off.
was just gonna say that would actually, that's your April usage. That would be in your May billing.
Well, Robert, let me ask you this. Is it any, or either Terry, is NTE, or are they looking at any way to help municipalities like ourselves because of this hit, through their lobbying or anything? Because with all this federal money, is there any way that we can recoup some on the back end through NTE, or, what are they saying to try to help out these small towns? I mean, because we know everybody's in a hardship, but also too, I mean, looking for them for some type of guidance, with the federal side.
Good question.
I mean, I certainly think we have electric cities that are lobbying on behalf of cities and towns with electric systems. In terms of what NTE as a private corporation is doing, I don't know. Obviously, they're located in more than one state, so I'm not exactly sure what they're doing. We haven't had any direct conversations. However, we do remain and stay in contact with them regularly. I will just say that I encourage council to direct staff and/or get involved yourself to try to contact federal folks about potential reliefs for cities and towns. A lot of this effect is not being reimbursed, at least into this as it stands right now, by the federal government. There are only very small portions that have even been discussed. So we're definitely going to see losses in revenues that we may or may not recoup at all ever.
Yeah, and that's my thing, listening to what you're saying, Robert, and also Anthony. 10%, $45,000 plus the money that we're not going to collect. So it's going to be more to us, and that money. But like you said, we can make it up in 6 months, but we don't know. We don't know if people are going to be able to get back working like they were or whatever, but
customers do become a flight risk once their bills get a very large bill. Once they build that up, then you really got a challenge on your hand.
Right.
This is Veronica. I was on a call with Butterfield today, and he was saying that they would probably go back in session in August for the whole month of August to consider some things as far as the effect of the virus on the revenues for cities and towns. And this was a call that was instituted by NCLM. So something is in the works for towns and cities because they do know that it will have an effect upon them.
Well, that's great to hear. And I know our league will continue to advocate in our favor along in conjunction with electricities to ensure that we know what's on the table so that we can then contact our representatives ourselves. What we wanted to do tonight to try to bring this kind of full circle staff is steadfast in rate stabilization. We want to continue to maintain the healthy fund that we currently have in our electric fund. However, we do know that people are being dramatically impacted by this global pandemic. Nothing like any of us ever thought. A month ago, if I thought we'd be having this kind of meeting, I wouldn't have believed it. Having said that, we tried to take a look at a couple of scenarios for your information, just to kind of set the stage. We know citizens are feeling this in a variety of ways. So staff calculated what the impact of a 1 month 30% reduction in electric rates, and we pitched that in 2 ways for you: residential only accounts, and then residential and commercial accounts. So you'll see the last 4 bullet points, the first 2 of that last 4 deal with the 30% 1 month reduction. That would be for April usage and would be billed in May. So if we did residential only and we added in the loss of revenue for non-payment and waiver of reconnection and late fees, we anticipate that we would see a loss of revenue in the neighborhood of $269,478. Now, if we added commercial accounts in there, and we understand you may want to look at across the board consideration, then those numbers go up slightly to $307,495. Staff felt like, though, that a one and done, a 1 month kind of higher level reduction may not have as big an impact to citizens who are struggling. And again, I state that we're only talking about a portion of our citizenry because everyone's not on Winterville Electric. But we did also want to propose something along the lines of a 10% reduction for a 3-month period. And that would cover months of April, May, and June usage, which would be billed in May, June, and July. And if you look at those numbers, we feel like this is going to go, I mean, we're still in this. So even if we go partly or solely into May, and then potentially beyond that, we wanted folks to feel like we're there with them. So a 10% reduction for 3 months in residential accounts only, coupled with the loss of revenue for the items we've talked about previously, would equate to about a loss of revenue in the neighborhood of $290,000. Now, if you add commercial accounts to that, it would slightly increase to $329,494. We wanted to give you something to discuss and something to work with. So with that said, I'll put that forward for any thoughts.
I like the idea of 10% for 2 months, and then as we get a little further along, we could potentially make a decision on the 3rd month. We have a lot of people out of work in town. We have a lot of businesses that are shut down right now. So I would prefer to see it across the board, but only go for 2 months with an option for the 3rd month that we can decide at a later date.
So Councilman Smith, if I understood you correctly, you would be looking to consider a 10% rate reduction for the usage months of April and May, billed in May and June, with the option to look at an additional month.
Correct.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Yeah, I was going to ask Councilman Smith, is that a motion?
I'll be happy to make it a motion.
And Councilman Hines, is that a second?
Yes.
Any discussion?
Yes, after the 2nd month, we will come back and revisit again to see if the virus still is going on. We will probably go back and revisit again to look at this situation all over again. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I would imagine that a lot of these things will be fluid. So depending on what the governor does at the end of this month and actually where the state is in terms of this pandemic, I anticipate we'll be discussing COVID-19 at least a couple of more times, if not more than that. So yes, sir.
And I would like to, Veronica again, some of our citizens have been misled to believe that they do not have to pay their utility bill. I've received several calls about that. And maybe I would like to see that addressed in our newsletter to let them know that you do have to pay it and that you can make arrangements to pay it, but that the bill will be due.
Ms. Robertson, I can vouch for that. I've heard so many phone conversations coming into our customer service center with regard to, exactly what it is that, is going on. And so, but you're right, a large portion of those customers are thinking that, they're not having to pay the bill. And, we have to explain to them that, yes, the bill's still due. We're just not going to disconnect for services, or we're not charging late fees at the current moment. But we have to, we're working in our office to educate them as they call in to make sure that they're aware, but it is out there for sure.
Councilwoman Robertson, it might be prudent. We weren't planning to do a newsletter per se this month because obviously a lot of our events and some of the things that we would put in a newsletter is no longer applicable. And also the information with COVID-19 is changing so rapidly. This might be a good, another opportunity to do a special mailing to all of our customers, just kind of trying to explain to them what's going on and what their responsibilities are.
I would like to applaud the staff at this time, because what you present to us tonight, I think is very appropriate at this time for our community, and there's a need for us to do something like this. I would go along with the 2 months. I even go along with the 3. I think 3 will take us right into June, because I don't foresee, I hope and pray that I'm wrong, that they would need a little bit more time in order to get things, kind of iron out a little bit better. But I would definitely support 2 months.
Anybody else have anything? The way the vote is going to read, it's a rather generic question. It's about this subject, but obviously the specificity was not contained because we didn't know what we would be talking about. So I'll restate the motion upon such time as there's no more discussion.
I think, well, if I could add one thing there, effective date would be important here, because when you get into meter reading and you start to split cycles and stuff like that, I think depending on the cycle, if we could, that way we have whole months.
You can add that into my motion. It'll be just fine, whatever's best for staff.
I'm sorry, Anthony, what did you say?
I just want to make sure that if we have an effective date of, you don't want to get into splitting cycles with the rates. So if we could, on the next bill date would be probably good verbiage that would allow us to, at the end of the bill cycle, regardless of which cycle it's on.
So it would be for the April readings that we're taking, for both for the cycle we're under now and the 20 cycle that'll follow. So two separate cycles or groups of cycles read at 2 separate times, but those readings would be incorporated into the 10% reduction. Does that make sense?
I still second it.
So for the, I mean,
We'll
how do
take care of the logistics.
well, I need to make sure we've got the motion correct. How do you want to word that? So for the April cycles and the May cycles?
Yes, for the April and May reading cycles.
Yeah, that's good. Then you don't have to worry about dates.
Councilman Moore, I think you may have been muted. Did we miss any
No, I agree.
feedback from you? Okay.
I agree.
So as I understand it, the motions are, or the motion is to offer Winterville Electric customers a 10% reduction on electric usage for the April and May 2020 reading cycles, a 10% reduction to be in with an option to revisit a 3rd month. That wasn't very eloquently stated, but let's try it again. We want to offer Winterville Electric citizens a 10% reduction for April and May reading cycles. Did I miss anything?
Sounds good, Terry.
Councilman Hines, you second that?
I second that still, yes.
And
All
this is only for electric rates, right?
That's correct.
Sure.
But thank you for asking that question, Councilwoman Robertson. Okay, then I'm getting ready to launch the vote. Okay, I believe we have all the votes in, and it looks like everyone voted in favor of that motion, so that item is approved. Thank you, folks. Staff will get to work on implementing that and getting information out to all of the affected customers about what they can expect. You may have some questions from folks who are on Greenville Utilities Electric, and we will try to give Greenville Utilities heads up that folks may be calling. Okay, are there any items for future agenda or work sessions?
Do we do your evaluation before or after the budget?
It's usually in April. However, we are in April and things have been a little crazy, so we will need to set a date for that. And if council wants to take a look at their calendars, or if you'd like to set a date tonight, that's completely up to you.
I would like to suggest that we wait a while on that. Is there anything wrong with doing it, say, putting it off until after our next meeting?
No, ma'am, I certainly don't think so. It's probably better to try to see where we are in terms of everything else we've got going on. Budget's
So could we put it on the agenda for next month?
Sure. Okay. Is that it for that item?
Yep.
Okay, we're moving into reports from department heads. I'm not sure if anybody has anything they'd like to put forward, but bring it.
Yes, have we heard anything from the requesting to apply for funds to help us out with that Blue Line string?
Councilman Moy, I'll turn that over to either Mr. Williams or Mr. Wellborn.
Councilman Moy, this is Ben. Good evening, everyone. The group that funds those types of projects have their July 1 application deadline. And they, at the moment, don't have money available. They will still take applications just in case some money does become available. We can certainly submit something for the stabilization if council so desires and direct staff to do so, an application to the Division Water Resources Project Development Grant Program.
Thank you. I appreciate it if you would. Do I need to have a motion on that?
You know, that's the application that has a cost share. I believe it's $1 for dollar. As with some of our other applications, it does not cost us anything to submit other than if we were to utilize a consultant for some engineering and cost estimation. There's no cost to apply. It is only when you accept the grant offer, if awarded, and then you are on the hook for the $1 for dollar match based on the construction and consultant costs.
Okay, so it don't cost anything to apply?
Not for staff, but should we, need some engineering, we may need to pay consultant for some of that effort.
And it said you have to have it in by July 1st?
Off the top of my head, I believe their dates are July 1st, and they have two rounds per year, one beginning July 1 and one December 31st, if I recall.
Councilman Moy, would you like us to put that on the May agenda?
Please do.
I have a question for Travis. Travis, did you get that application in for that clean out, whatever?
Yeah, we got awarded that funding for the ditch
Okay.
clean out. We got $15,000.
Okay.
And they had asked for some information, and Anthony was kind enough to put that together and send that to them. And I think they needed that to prepare the contract, and so we're just waiting.
Good. That's good news.
We're just waiting. We're actually waiting on confirmation from Sam, and once
Okay.
that's complete, then we'll get it over to Heather to finalize everything.
Okay. Excellent news.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, I don't believe we have any announcements. So with that said, we'll move into reports from the town attorney, mayor, and town council. Keen says he does not have anything, but he is thrilled to be here tonight. in this alternate form of meeting.
Glad to have you back, King. Missed you last month.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be back.
Yes, we're glad to have you back.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So, council members, I know we normally go down the line, and mayor too. So how about if you all just kind of go as you see fit, if you'd like to make any comments?
Well, I start. I just want to thank the staff and for all the hard work. I know it's been kind of tough time trying to get things done and social distancing and everything else. But I commend y'all for the effort y'all put in and the work y'all done. And Terry and your administrative staff for putting this together, using Zoom. Of course, everybody now is using that as a form of communicating now for meetings and everything else. And I think y'all did a great job. Give yourself a hand, a pat on the back. I mean, we appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
This is Councilwoman Robertson. I'd like to echo what Councilman Hines said. I do appreciate everything that everyone's done for this difficult time that we're going through right now so that our town can go on and progress and do the things that we need to do. I have been keeping up with some of the things from Congressman Butterfield's office as to some of the things that are going to be awarded to people in our community. And I do encourage our businesses to apply for some of these monies. We've got several businesses that I know were hit hard because they're just open. But I do encourage them to apply for funds that are available to help them stay open. And for our citizens, anything that they need to just let us know so that we can do our best to help them. And if they got questions, please call.
Absolutely.
But this is more, I just want to say to the staff and to our citizen, our prayers is we have to continue on praying for one another and do all we can for one another. If you see a need, if you can help, please step forward and do what you can to help out. But always remember, maintain your social distance at all times. These things appear that it's begin to have leveled out a little. So we are doing the right thing. So I'm asking us as the staff and the community, continue on doing what you've been doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just say thank you to the staff. You guys and ladies are doing a great job. These are very difficult and strange times. I appreciate what you're doing. Each one of you doing a fantastic job. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I get, maybe it's me.
Okay, me.
Okay. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the town for thoughts and prayers while I was in the hospital and rehab. I received flowers from the town or whatever, and I much appreciated it. On another note, I was called last week. If I guess maybe people are pretty well informed or know about the House of Rayford. They are poultry producers and sell turkeys and chickens and all this kind of stuff. I think they're located in, I believe, in Roseboro or somewhere. But anyhow, they are in the process of, according to the gentleman that called me, to try to help the community out in this time in offering sale of chicken, bulk sales, I'll call it. Last week, Terry, you may be aware, they had a truck set up in Mount Olive, and they sell out of the truck to the community around. And the gentleman that called me would like to have a truck to come in Winterville this coming Thursday, but I told him I could not grant that without council's approval. They would like to set up at the town common, which is across, I call it across from the fire station, and they would be selling 40-pound cases of boneless, skinless breast meat, chicken meat, and also 40 pounds of thigh meat. The breast meat would be $45 per 40 pounds, and the thigh meat would be $35 per case. So I'm just asking, does council have any problems with them doing that? Or if I told the gentleman I'd call him, and just as soon as I found out what the council's feeling was. Does anybody have any question about what I just presented?
Mayor, I have,
Only question. So from a police perspective would be the peddler's permit, if it would be waived or if it would be enforced?
That would be up to council.
This is Councilwoman Robertson. I had asked council before, to the town manager and to Stephen about, there were some community groups that wanted to have events at the town commons area also. And one group wanted to give away food, plates of food in the past. I know that this is a different time and a different effort, but I was never given any definite direction on that. So it would seem to me to be kind of similar to that.
if I may, I would just say that I have two concerns. Number one is we don't normally allow the sale of private goods on town property. I realize the circumstances we're in. Number two, I'm not sure what the health codes are around all of that. And number three, we would want to make sure that there's no violation of the mass gatherings of 10 or more folks, which is currently against the law. It sounds like I'm being negative about the request, and Councilwoman Robertson, you are correct. We know we've had requests. We've not actually, to my knowledge, heard more information from those entities about their request, but certainly if they get in touch with us, I don't recall the circumstances of the food, whether they were selling or giving that away. You might have to remind me of that. But
it was going to be free food. It was going. They wanted to give away dinners.
I got
to the community.
So I would just throw those things out about this particular request.
Well, I'm just asking, what's council's? Do we need to vote on it or not?
I'm not in favor of it, Mayor. I'm be honest with you. I mean, right now, I'm just not, like you said, social distancing. I could possibly see traffic being a problem over there and everything else. So I'm not in favor of it right now.
Would that be a motion?
I can put it in a motion form that if I need to, but yeah, I'm not in favor of opening up all commons to sell private goods.
I agree. Hines.
Say it again.
I agree with Councilman Hines. I don't think we need to open it up because of distancing this. We give away something free, be lined up.
That'll be, I can understand and I can relay that information to this gentleman. And that as far as I'm concerned, the request would be denied.
Just as a point of clarification, I think Keen said we would definitely need a motion to approve it, but he does not think we would need a motion not to allow it.
Okay, so I think it's pretty well stated that we will deny it then.
Yes.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
Well, again, Terry, you say he needed that motion, right?
No, we don't need a motion to deny it, just need a motion to approve it.
Okay, all right, okay. I'm sorry, I misunderstood the second part.
Look, please question me because I'm not always sure my brain is in tip-top shape. Hopefully it is.
Okay.
Anybody, any other comments from council?
I would add, and it's already been mentioned several times, that gatherings of 10 or more is illegal by the governor's order.
Yes, sir. Well, Mayor and Council, if I may make a couple of comments. First of all, I want to thank the council for your support and direction during this very unusual time that we're living in. It has been a challenge to say the least. However, we could not have done what we're doing without the guidance and directions of you all. I would also like to thank the rock star staff that the town of Winterville has. If it weren't for staff, we would not have this format we're meeting in tonight. I mean, there are folks, Willie Gay, Evan Johnston, Ben Williams, Amy Barrow, Don Harvey, Brian Jones, that worked specifically on trying to get, and if I forgot anybody, please let me know, that got this meeting format set up such
And
that working, I'm sorry?
And Amy.
Yes. I said Amy, but if I didn't, Amy, you know, I always mean you. So many thanks to them, but thanks to the staff as a whole, because these folks have taken the challenges that we have and that they have made sure they come to work, and they've gotten used to altered work schedules and all different ways of working, and everybody is just really working hard and doing the best they can. So I couldn't be prouder. I say that all the time, but they never cease to amaze me. So for that, many, many thanks to all of them for keeping us up and running and services to the citizens. Is there anything else, folks?
A motion to adjourn.
Okay, so I have one last vote, and that will be to adjourn. So if you give me 1 moment, I'll launch that. It'll be interesting to see if anybody votes against it.
We'll shoot them.
I know, right?
I believe all of the votes are in, and surprise, surprise, everyone is in favor of adjourning the meeting. I'd like to thank council. You guys jumped in this new format, and it's a first for us, but I think it went really well. So thanks to everyone.
Cool.
All right. And with that said,
Good night.
good night. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.